Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Testing, testing. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, welcome. Welcome to today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're starting this week with Canto verse 7, chapter 5, chapter entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. But before that, let's recite the verses of glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpalam, Sarva Siddhantna Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpradam, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Vidvanto Ditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartitam, Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya, Shri Krishna Namostume, Madhika Bandhamangin, Madguru Matmahadana, Manishtam Bhagya Madananda Namostate, Asadu Sadutadain, Atini Chochatarakam, Hanamunchaka Premna Hritkantayospura. Translation: O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, single of all the Vedas, rich of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. Of all those masters, you are the exact image of Shri Krishna, who is supremely blissful truth. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my ecstasy, I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalted most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So again, welcome everyone. We're continuing Canto chapter 5, verse 7 of the reading of this Srimad Bhagavatam, and let's start with the translation. You may narrate also the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations for the welfare of the twice born, the cows and the demigods. Our minds are never set completely, although we continuously hear transcendental activities. Purport by His Divine Grace Swami Srila Prabhupada. Purport: the Lord appears in this universe in different incarnations, like Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, and Nrsimha, and his different activities for the welfare of the twice born, the cows, and the demigods. The Lord is directly concerned with the twice born or civilized man. A civilized man is one who has taken his birth twice. A living entity takes birth in this mundane world due to the union of male and female. A human born due to union of the father and mother, but a civilized human being by contact with a spiritual master who becomes the actual the father and the mother are so only in one birth, and in the next birth the father and mother may be a different couple. But the bona fide spiritual master, as the representative of the Lord, is the eternal Father, because the spiritual ability to lead the spiritual is the ultimate goal of life. Therefore, a civilized man must be twice born, otherwise lower animals. The cow is the most important animal for developing the human body to perfection. The body can be maintained by any kind of foodstuff, but cow's milk is particularly essential for developing the finer tissues of the human brain, so that one can understand the intricacies of transcendental knowledge. A civilized man is expected to live on foodstuffs comprising fruits, vegetables, grains, sugar, and milk. The bull helps in the agriculture process of producing grain, etc. And thus, in one sense, the bull is the father of humankind, whereas the cow is the mother, for she supplies milk to human society. A civilized man is therefore expected to give all protection to the bulls and cows. The demigods, or the living entities who live in the higher planets, are far superior to human beings. Since they have better arrangements for living conditions, they live far more luxuriously than human beings, yet they are all devotees of the Lord. The Lord incarnates in different forms, such as those of a fish, a tortoise, a hawk, and man, just to give protection to civilized men, the cow and the demigods, who are directly responsible for the regulative life of progressive self-realization. The whole system of the material creation is planned so that the conditioned souls have an opportunity for self-realization. One who takes advantage of such an arrangement is called a demigod or civilized man. The Lord's pastimes for the of the twice-born civilized are all transcendental. A human being is inclined to hear good narrations, and there are so many books, magazines, and newspapers to satisfy the developed soul. But the pleasure in such literature at once becomes, and people do not take any such literature seriously. In fact, papers are read for less than an hour and then thrown in the dust as rubbish. All other modern literatures. But the beauty of constant literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam is that they never become old. They have been read in the world by civilized men for the last 5,000 years, and they have never become. They are ever fresh to the learned devotees, and even by the daily repetition of the verses of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidura might have times of the Lord many times before he met Maitreya, but still he wanted the same narrations to be repeated because he was never satiated by hearing them. It is the transcendental nature of the Lord's glorious pastimes. 8. The Supreme King of all kings has created planets and places of habitation where living entities are situated in terms of nature and work, and he has created their kings and rulers. Purport. Krishna is the chief king of all kings, and he has different planets for all kinds of living entities. Even on this planet, there are different places for inhabitation by different types of men. There are like deserts, icelands, and valleys in mountainous countries, and in each of them there are different men born of different modes of nature to their past deeds. There are people in the Himalayan mountains, and in these two places differ, just as the Icelands also different planets. The planets below the earth, the planet, are full of various kinds of living beings, not wrongly imagined by the modern so-called scientist. In Bhagavad Gita we find it said by the Lord that the living entities are sarvagata, or present in every sphere of life. So there is no doubt that on other planets there are all inhabitants like us, sometimes with greater intelligence and greater opulence. The living entities for those with greater intelligence are more luxurious than on this earth. So planets where no sun reaches, and there are living entities who must live there due to their past deeds. All such plans and conditions are made by the Supreme Lord, and Vidura requested Maitreya to describe this for the sake of further enlightenment. Text 9. O chief amongst the Brahmanas, please also describe how Narayana, the creator of the universe and the self-sufficient Lord, has differently created the natures, forms, features, and names of the different living creatures. Purport. Every living being is under the plan of his natural inclinations in terms of the modes of material nature. His work is manifested in terms of the nature of the three modes. His form and bodily features are designed according to his work, and his name is designated according to. For example, the higher classes of men are white, Shukla, and the lower classes of men are black. This division of white and black is in terms of one's white and black duties of life. Pious acts lead one to take birth in a good and highly placed family, to become rich, to become learned, and to acquire beautiful bodily features. Impious acts lead one to become poor by parentage, to be always in want, to become a fool or illiterate, and to acquire ugly body features. Vidura requested Maitreya to explain these differences between all the living creatures made by Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 10. O my Lord, I have repeatedly heard about these higher and lower statuses of human society from the mouth of Vyasadeva, and I am quite satiated with all these lesser subject matters and their happiness. They have not satisfied me with the nectar of topics about Krishna. Purport. Because people are very much interested in hearing social and historical presentations, Srila Vyasadeva has compiled many books such as the Puranas and Mahabharata. These books are reading matter for the mass of people, and they were compiled with a view to reviving their God consciousness, now forgotten in the conditional life of material existence. The real purpose of such literatures is not so much to present topics of historical references, but to revive the people's sense of God consciousness. For example, Mahabharata is the history of the battle of Kurukshetra, and common people read it because it is full of topics regarding the social, political, and economic problems of human society. But factually, the most important part of Mahabharata is Bhagavad Gita, which is automatically taught to readers along with the historical narrations of the battle of Kurukshetra. Vidura explained to Maitreya his position of being fully satiated with the knowledge of mundane social and political topics, and having no more interest in them. He was anxious to hear transcendental topics regarding Lord Sri Krishna. Because there were insufficient topics directly concerning Krishna in the Puranas, Mahabharata, etc., he was not satisfied and wanted to know more about Krishna. Krishna Katha, or topics regarding Krishna, are transcendental, and there is no satiation in hearing such topics. Bhagavad Gita is important on account of its being Krishna Katha, or speeches delivered by Lord Krishna. The story of the battle of Kurukshetra may be interesting for the mass of people, but to a person like Vidura, who is highly advanced in devotional service, only Krishna Katha and that which is dovetailed with Krishna Katha is interesting. Vidura wanted to hear of everything from Maitreya, and so he inquired from him, but he desired that all the topics be in relationship with Krishna. As fire is never satisfied in its consumption of firewood, so a pure devotee of the Lord never hears enough about Krishna. Historical events and other narrations concerning social and political incidents all become transcendental as soon as they are in relationship with Krishna. That is the way to transform mundane things into spiritual identity. The whole world can be transformed into Vaikuntha if all world activities are dovetailed with Krishna Katha. There are Krishna Kathas current in Bhagavad Srimad Bhagavad because it is Krishna Katha narrates about Krishna. Lord Chaitanya is all his Katha all over the world without discrimination. The transcendental value of Krishna Katha can one and all from material contamination. 7. Who in human society can be satisfied with hearing sufficient talk of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of places of pilgrimage, and who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? Such topics cut off one's bondage to family affairs simply by entering the whole one's ears. Purport. Krishna Katha is so powerful that simply by entering into a person's ear, it can at once give deliverance from the bondage of family affection. Family affection is an illusory manifestation of the external energy, the only impetus for all mundane activities. As there is mundane activity in the mind, and the mind is absorbed in such engagement, one has to undergo the repetition of birth and death in the current material nations. People are most influenced by the modes, and some are influenced by the passionate mode of material nature, and under the spell of these two modes, a living being is actuated by the material conception of life. The mundane qualities do not allow a living entity to understand his real position. The qualities of both ignorance and passion strongly bind one to the illusory conception of the self. The best among the fools who are thus deluded are those who engage in altruistic activities under the spell of the material mode of passion. Bhagavad Gita, which is direct Krishna Katha, gives humanity the elementary lesson that the body is perishable and the consciousness which is spread throughout the body is imperishable. The conscious being, the imperishable self, is eternally existent and cannot be killed under any circumstances, even after the dissolution of the body. Anyone who misunderstands this perishable body to be the self and who works for it in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism, and internationalism, under the false plea of the bodily conception of life, is certainly a fool and does not know the implications of reality and unreality. Some of them are above the modes of ignorance and passion and are situated in a mode of goodness. But mundane goodness is always contaminated by tinges of ignorance and passion. Mundane goodness can enlighten one that the body and the self are different, and one is concerned with the self and not the body. But due to being contaminated, those in goodness cannot understand the real nature of the self as a person. Their impersonal conception of self are distinct from the body, keeps them in the mode of goodness within nature. And unless they are attracted by Krishna Katha, they will never be liberated from the bondage of material existence. Krishna Katha is the only remedy for all people of the world, because it can situate one in pure consciousness of the self and liberate one from material bondage. To preach Krishna Katha all over the world, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, is the greatest missionary activity, and all sensible men and women of the world may join in this great movement started by Lord Chaitanya. Text 12. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. Purport. The great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa is the author of all Vedic literature, of which his works Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mahabharata are very popular readings. As stated in Bhagavatam 1.4.25, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Mahabharata for the less intelligent class of men, who take more interest in mundane topics than in the philosophy of life. The Vedanta Sutra was compiled for persons already above the mundane topics, who might already have tasted the bitterness of the so-called happiness of mundane affairs. Who have tasted the bitterness of the happiness. That's nice. The first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Athato Brahma Jignasa. That is, only when one has finished the business of mundane inquiries in the marketplace of sense gratification can one make relevant inquiries regarding Brahman, the transcendence. Those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries which fill the newspapers and other such literatures are classified as Stri Shudra Dvija Bandhus, or women, the laborer class, and unworldly sons of the higher classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishyas. Such less intelligent men cannot understand the purpose of Vedanta Sutra, although they may make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way. The real purpose of Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone trying to understand Vedanta Sutra without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. Such misguided persons who are interested in the mundane affairs of philanthropic and altruistic work under the misconception of the body as the self could better take advantage of the Mahabharata, which was specifically compiled by Srila Vyasadeva for their benefit. The great author has compiled the Mahabharata in such a way that the less intelligent class of men who are more interested in the mundane topics may read the Mahabharata with great relish, and in the course of such mundane happiness can also take advantage of Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam or the Vedanta Sutra. Srila Vyasadeva had no interest in writing a history of mundane activities, other than to give less intelligent persons a chance for transcendental realization through Bhagavad Gita. Vidura's reference to the Mahabharata indicates that he had heard of the Mahabharata from Vyasadeva his real father, while he was away from home and was touring the places of pilgrimage. Text 13. For one who is anxious to engage constantly in hearing such topics, Krishna Katha gradually increases his indifference towards all other things. Such constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna by the devotee who has achieved transcendental bliss vanquishes all his miseries without delay. Purport. We must certainly know that on the absolute plane, Krishna Katha and Krishna are one and the same. The Lord is the absolute truth, and therefore his name, form, quality, etc., which are all understood to be Krishna Katha, are none different from him. Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Lord, is as good as the Lord himself. When a sincere devotee reads Bhagavad Gita, this is as good as seeing the Lord face to face in his personal presence. But this is not so for the mundane wrangler. All the potencies of the Lord are there when one reads Bhagavad Gita, provided it is read in the way recommended in the Gita by the Lord himself. One cannot foolishly manufacture an interpretation of Bhagavad Gita and still bring about transcendental benefit. Anyone who tries to squeeze some artificial meaning or interpretation from Bhagavad Gita for an ulterior motive is not shradadhana pumsaha. One engaged anxiously in bona fide hearing of Krishna Katha. That's end of parenthesis. Such a person cannot derive any benefit from reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, from reading Bhagavad Gita, however great a scholar he may be in the estimation of a layman. The Shradadhana, or faithful devotee, can actually derive all the benefits of Bhagavad Gita, because by the omnipotency of the Lord, he achieves the transcendental bliss which vanquishes attachment and nullifies all concomitant material miseries. Only the devotee, by his factual experience, can understand the import of this verse spoken by Vidura. The pure devotee of the Lord enjoys life by constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing Krishna Katha. For such a devotee, there is no such thing as material existence, and the much advertised bliss of Brahmananda is like a fig for the devotee who is in the midst of the transcendental ocean of bliss. You know, fig like that fruit, like worthless. Small. They would use this expression like fig. It's worth figs, like it's not worth nothing. So it's funny here. I don't see that Prabhupada mentioning this. He's using this expression like a fig. You can say, "I don't give a fig." I don't give a fig. No. I don't give a fig. I don't give much importance to it. It's not important. Okay, enough of the figs. Text 14. O sage, persons who, because of their sinful activities, are averse to the topics of transcendence, and thus ignorant of the purpose of the Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, are pitied by the pitiable. No. I also pity them, because I see how their duration of life is spoiled by eternal time, while they involve themselves in presentations of philosophical speculation, theoretical ultimate goals of life, and different modes of ritual. Purport. According to the modes of material nature, there are three kinds of relationships between human beings and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are in the modes of ignorance and passion are averse to the existence of God, or else they formally accept the existence of God in the capacity of an order supplier. Above them are those who are in the mode of goodness. The second class of men believe the Supreme Brahman to be impersonal. They accept the cult of bhakti, in which hearing of Krishna Katha is the first item, as a means and not the end. Above them are those who are pure devotees. They are situated in a transcendental stage above the mode of material goodness. Such persons are decidedly convinced that the name, form, fame, qualities, etc. of the personality of Godhead are non-different from one another on the absolute plane. For them, hearing of the topics of Krishna is equal to meeting him with him face to face. According to this class of men who are situated in the pure devotional service of the Lord, the highest goal of human life is Purushartha, devotional service to the Lord, the real mission of life. The impersonalists, because they engage in mental speculation and have no faith in the personality of Godhead, have no business hearing the topics of Krishna. Such persons are pitiable for the first class, pure devotees of the Lord. The pitiable impersonalists pity those who are influenced by the modes of ignorance and passion, but the pure devotees of the Lord take pity on them both, because both waste their most valuable time in the human form of life, in false pursuits, sense enjoyment, and mental speculative presentations of different theories and goals of life. Text 15. O Maitreya, O friend of the distressed, the glories of the Supreme Lord can alone do good for people all over the world. Therefore, just as bees collect honey from flowers, kindly describe the essence of all topics, the topics of the Lord. Purport. There are many topics for different persons in different modes of material nature, but the essential topics are those in relationship with the Supreme Lord. Unfortunately, materially affected conditioned souls are all more or less averse to topics of the Supreme Lord, because some of them do not believe in the existence of God, and some of them believe only in the impersonal feature of the Lord. In both cases, there is nothing for them to say of God. Both the non-believers and the impersonalists deny the essence of all topics. Therefore, they engage in topics of relativity in various ways, either in sense gratification or in mental speculation. For the pure devotees like Vidura, the topics of both the mundaners and the mental speculators are useless in all respects. Thus Vidura requested Maitreya to talk of the essence only, the talks of Krishna, and nothing else. Text 16. Kindly chant all those superhuman transcendental activities of the Supreme Controller, the Personality of Godhead, who accepted incarnations fully equipped with all potency, full management, and maintenance of the cosmic creation. Vidura was undoubtedly very eager to hear about Lord Krishna in particular, but he was overwhelmed because Lord Krishna had just passed away from the visible world. He therefore wanted to hear about him in his Purusha incarnations, which he manifests with full potencies and maintenance of the cosmic world. The activities of the Purusha incarnations are but an extension of the activities of the Lord. This hint was given by Vidura to Maitreya because Maitreya could decide which part of the activities of Lord Krishna should he chant. 17. Shukadev Goswami said, the great sage Maitreya, after honoring Vidura very greatly, began to speak at his request for the greatest welfare of all people. Purport. The great sage Maitreya Muni is described here as Bhagavan because he surpassed all ordinary human beings in learning and experience. Thus his selection of the great welfare service for the world is considered authoritative. The all-inclusive welfare service for the entire society is devotional service to the Lord, and, as requested by Vidura, the sage described the same very appropriately. Text 8. Sri Maitreya said, O Vidura, all glory unto you. You have inquired from me of the greatest of all goodness, and thus you have shown your mercy both to the world and to me, because your mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the transcendence. Purport. Maitreya, who was experienced in the science of transcendence, could understand that Vidura's mind was fully absorbed in transcendence. Adokshaja means that which transcends the limits of sense perception or sensuous experience. The Lord is transcendental to our sense experience, but he reveals himself to the sincere devotee. Because Vidura was always absorbed in thoughts of the Lord, Maitreya could estimate Vidura's transcendental value. He appreciated the valuable inquiries of Vidura and thus thanked him with great honor. 19. O Vidura, it is not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought, for you were born from the semen of Vyasadeva. Purport. The value of great parentage and noble birth is evaluated here in connection with the birth of Vidura. The culture of a human being begins when the father invests his semen in the womb of the mother. According to his status of work, a living entity is placed in a particular father's semen, and because Vidura was not an ordinary living entity, he was given the chance to be born from the semen of Vyasa. The birth of a human being is a great science, and therefore reformation of the act of impregnation, according to the Vedic ritual called Garbhadana Samskara, is very important for generating good population. The problem is not to check the growth of the population, but to generate good population on the level of Vidura, Vyasa and Maitreya. There is no need to check the growth of population if the children are born as human beings with all precautions regarding their birth. So-called birth control is not only vicious but also useless. Yeah, we have someone who agrees. Text 20. I know that you are now Vidura due to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Yamaraj, the great controller of living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife of his brother. Purport. Mandavya Muni was a great sage. It's from Bhagavatam 1.13.1. And Vidura was formerly the controller Yamaraj, who takes charge of the living entities after death. Birth, maintenance, and death are three conditional states of the living entities who are within the material world. As the appointed controller after death, Yamaraj once tried Mandavya Muni for his childhood profligacy. What is that? Profligacy. Let's check. We have a definition, profligacy. Someone who spends money? Extravagant? Spending money?
Splendid. You spend more money.
Yeah. Profligacy. Okay, this sentence again. As the appointed controller after death, Yamaraj once tried Mandavya Muni for his childhood profligacy. Doesn't make sense, no?
It's like childhood, like a mischief or something, because he pierced this small worm or ant or something. Bug with this straw.
He was
pierced bug or something with the straw.
He was torturing them.
Yeah, like a torture.
For his naughtiness or something.
Yeah, yes. That's the meaning. At least that was the
implied.
history.
That makes sense.
If you know the background, yeah, like Dina, then you can say the word what it means without checking the dictionary.
Don't you have dictionary, automatic dictionary there?
Yeah, it didn't come up.
Oh.
It doesn't recognize the word. It says something about spending money profusely, but it doesn't look like it's working. No. So Yamaraj once tried Mandavya Muni for his childhood profligacy and ordered him to be pierced with a lance. Mandavya, being angry at Yamaraj for awarding him undue punishment, cursed him to become a Shudra, member of the less intelligent laborer class. Thus Yamaraj took birth in the womb of the kept wife of Vichitravirya, from the semen of Vichitravirya's brother, Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the son of Satyavati by the great king Shantanu, the father of Bhishmadeva. This mysterious history of Vidura was known to Maitreya Muni because he happened to be a contemporary friend of Vyasadeva's. In spite of Vidura's birth from the womb of a kept wife, because he had otherwise high parentage and great connection, he inherited the highest talent of becoming a great devotee of the Lord. To take birth in such a great family is understood to be an advantage for attaining devotional life. Vidura was given this chance due to his previous greatness. 21. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. Purport. Yamaraj, the great controller of life after death, decides the living entities' destinies in their next lives. He is surely among the most confidential representatives of the Lord. Such confidential posts are offered to great devotees of the Lord, who are as good as his eternal associates in the spiritual sky. And because Vidura happened to be among them, the Lord, while returning to Vaikuntha, left instructions for Vidura with Maitreya Muni. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person or to propagate the message of God in human society. Such empowered representatives are called Shaktyavesha avatars, or incarnations invested with transcendental power of attorney. Power of attorney. There's also an expression.
So it's like authority,
No, sir.
authority.
It's authorization and authority to act on someone's behalf. Text 22. I shall therefore describe to you the pastimes by which the personality of Godhead extends his transcendental potency for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic world, as they occur one after another. Purport. The omnipotent Lord, by his different energies, can perform anything and everything he likes. The creation of the cosmic world is done by his Yogamaya energy. 23. The personality of Godhead, the master of all living entities, existed prior to the creation as one second. It is by only creation is made possible, and again everything merges in him. This Supreme Self is symptomized by different names. Purport. The great sage here begins to explain the purpose of the 4 original verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Although they have no access to the Bhagavatam, followers of the Mayavada impersonalist school sometimes screw out an imaginary explanation of the original 4 verses. But we must accept the actual explanation given herein by Maitreya Muni, because he, along with Uddhava, personally heard directly from the Lord. The first line of the original runs, Aham evasam evagre. The word Aham is misinterpreted by the Mayavada school into which no one but the interpreter can understand. Here Aham is explained as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not the individual living entities. Before creation, there was only the Personality of Godhead. There were no Purusha incarnations, and certainly no living entities. Nor was there the material energy by which the manifested creation is affected. Purusha incarnations and all different energies of the Lord were merged in him only. The Personality of Godhead is described herein as the master of all other living entities. He is like the sun, and the living entities are like the molecules of the sun's ray. This existence of the Lord before the creation is confirmed by the Shrutis. Vasudeva Vaidam Agnama Nacha Shangham Eko Vainayana Asina Brahma Neshanaha. Because everything that be is an emanation from the Personality of Godhead, he always exists alone without a second. He can so exist because he is all-perfect and omnipotent. Everything other than him, including his plenary expansions, Vishnu Tattvas, is his part and parcel. Before the creation, there were no Karano Narnavashai or Garbhododakashai or Kshirodakashai Vishnu, or was there Brahma nor Shankara. The Vishnu plenary expansion and the living entities, beginning from Brahma, are separated parts and parcels. Although the spiritual existence was there, the Lord, the material existence was dormant in him. By his will only is the material manifestation done and undone. The diversity of the Vaikuntha Loka is one with the Lord. The diversity of soldiers is one with and the same as the king. Gita 9.7. The material creation takes place by the will of the Lord, and in the periods between dissolution and creation, living entities and the material energy remain dormant in him. Text 4. The Lord, the undisputed proprietor of everything, was the only seer. The coming manifestation was not present at that time, and thus he felt imperfect without his plenary and separate parts and parcels. The material energy was dormant, whereas the internal potency was manifested. Purport. The Lord is the supreme seer, because only by his glance does the material energy become active for manifestation. At that time, the seer, but the external energy, over which the glance of the Lord is, was not present. He felt somewhat insufficient, like a husband feeling lonely in the absence of his wife. This is a poetic simile. The Lord wanted to create the cosmic manifestation to give another chance to the conditioned souls who were dormant in forgetfulness. Who were dormant in forgetfulness. The cosmic manifestation gives the conditioned souls a chance to go back home, back to Godhead, and that is its main purpose. The Lord is so kind that in the absence of such a manifestation, he feels something wanting, and thus the creation takes place. Although the creation of the internal potency was manifested, the other potency appeared to be sleeping, and the Lord wanted to awaken her to activity, just as a husband wants to awaken his wife from the sleeping state for enjoyment. It is the compassion of the Lord for the sleeping energy that he wants to see her awaken for enjoyment like the other wives who are awake. The whole process is to enliven the sleeping conditioned souls to the real life of spiritual consciousness, so that they may thus become as perfect as the ever liberated souls in the Vaikuntha Lokas. Since the Lord is Satchidananda Vigraham, he likes every part and parcel of his different potencies to take part in the blissful rasa, because participation with the Lord in his eternal rasa lila is the highest living condition, perfect in spiritual bliss and eternal knowledge. Yeah. Text 25. The Lord is the seer, and the external energy, which is seen, works as both cause and effect in the cosmic manifestation. O greatly fortunate Vidura, this external energy is known as Maya or illusion, and through her agency only is the entire material manifestation made possible. Purport. The material nature, known as Maya, is both the material and efficient cause of the cosmos, but in the background the Lord is the consciousness for all activities. As in the individual body, the consciousness is the source of all energies of the body, so the supreme consciousness of the Lord is the source of all energies in the material nature. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.10 as follows. Mayadhyakshena prakriti suate sachara charam hetunanena kaunteya jagadviparivartate. Throughout all the energies of material nature, there is the hand of the Supreme Lord as the final superintendent. Due to this supreme cause only, the activities of material nature appear planned and systematic, and all things regularly evolve. Text 26. The Supreme Living Being in his feature as the Transcendental Purusha incarnation, who is the Lord's plenary expansion, impregnates the material nature of three modes, and thus, by the influence of eternal time, the living entities appear. Purport. The offspring of any living being is born after the father impregnates the mother with semen, and the living entity floating in the semen of the father takes the shape of the mother's form. Similarly, Mother Material Nature cannot produce any living entity from her material elements unless and until she is impregnated with living entities by the Lord Himself. That is the mystery of the generation of the living entities. This impregnating process is performed by the first Purusha incarnation, Karanar Navashai Vishnu. Simply by his glance over a material nature, the whole matter is accomplished. We should not understand the process of impregnation by the personality of Godhead in terms of our conception of sex. The omnipotent Lord can impregnate just by His eyes, and therefore He is called all-potent. Each and every part of His transcendental body can perform each and every function of the other parts. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Agnani yasya shakalendriya vrittimanti. In Bhagavad Gita 14.3 also, the same principle is confirmed. Mama yonir mahat brahma tasmin garbham dadami aham. When the cosmic creation is manifested, the living entities are directly supplied from the Lord. They are never products of material nature. Thus, no scientific advancement of material science can ever produce a living being. That is the whole mystery of the material creation. The living entities are foreign to matter, and thus they cannot be happy unless they are situated in the same spiritual life as the Lord. They cannot be happy. The mistaken living being, out of forgetfulness of this original condition of life, unnecessarily wastes time trying to become happy in the material world. The whole Vedic process is to remind one of this essential feature of life. The Lord offers the conditioned soul a material body for his so-called enjoyment. But if one does not come to his senses and enter into spiritual consciousness, the Lord again puts him in the unmanifested condition as it existed in the beginning of the creation. The Lord is described here as Viryavan, or the greatest potent being, because he impregnates material nature with innumerable living entities who are conditioned from time immemorial. Text 27. Thereafter, influenced by the interactions of eternal time, the supreme sum total of matter called the Mahatattva became manifested, and in this Mahatattva the unalloyed goodness, the Supreme Lord, sowed the seeds of universal manifestation out of his own body. Purport. In due course of time, the impregnated material energy was manifested first as the total material ingredients. Everything takes its own time to fructify, and therefore the word kala choditat, influenced by time, is used herein. The Mahatattva is the total consciousness, because a portion of it is represented in everyone as the intellect. The Mahatattva is directly connected with the supreme consciousness of the Supreme Being, but still it appears as matter. The Mahatattva, or shadow of pure consciousness, is the germinating place of all creation. It is pure goodness with a slight addition of the material mode of passion, and therefore activity is generated from this point. So, very interesting. Text 28. Thereafter, the Mahatattva differentiated itself into many different forms as the reservoir of the would-be entities. The Mahatattva is chiefly in the mode of ignorance, and it generates the false ego. It is plenary expansion of the personality of Godhead, with full consciousness of creative principles and time for fructification.
Fructification means it's more sweetness.
It's time to ripen. Yeah, or ripening. Yeah. It's purport. The Mahatattva is the via medium between pure spirit and material existence. It is the junction of matter and spirit, wherefrom the false ego of the living entity is generated. All living entities are differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Under the pressure of false ego, the conditioned souls, although parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, claim to be the enjoyers of material nature. This false ego is the binding force of material existence. The Lord again and again gives a chance to the bewildered conditioned souls to get free from this false ego, and that is why the material creation takes place at intervals. He gives the conditioned souls all facilities for rectifying the activities of the false ego, but he does not interfere with their small independence as parts and parcels of the Lord. Text 29. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport. A pure living entity in his original spiritual existence is fully conscious of his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Lord. All souls who are situated in such pure consciousness are liberated, and therefore they eternally live in bliss and knowledge in the various Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. When the material creation is manifested, it is not meant for them. The eternally liberated souls are called Nitya Muktas, and they had nothing to do with the material creation. The material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to accept subordination under the Supreme Lord. This spirit of false lordship is called false ego. It is manifested in three modes of material nature, and it exists in mental speculation only. Those who are in the mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in a transcendental loving service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode of passion try to lord it over material nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. This false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egoistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by identification of the gross body with the self. Thus, all their activities are centered around the body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with false egoistic ideas, but at the same time, the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that they may understand the signs of Krishna and thus make their life successful. The entire material creation, therefore, is meant for the falsely egoistic living entities hovering on the mental plane under different illusions in the modes of material nature.
They said three different modes, two opposite side, goodness and passion. And the ignorance is the negative side. But how is it possible? Goodness, passion is in the positive, but the ignorance is the negative side.
No, the passion is also in the highest. Even all three would be the so-called negative. Yeah, wouldn't be like, because we only the highest mode of goodness or the pure goodness would be the liberating aspect, would be the one bringing you the salvation, or the freedom and salvation being so as others are entangling all the other modes, even the goodness which sounds positive, which is best of the three, are still entangling. So it's also negative in that sense, but it's positive comparing to passion and ignorance. And passion is positive comparing to ignorance, of course. Just the way you see it. If you see it from the absolute, or from where you want to go, from we are where our goals are, all three of them are negative. You can say negative, but we first want to reach the goodness.
Yeah.
So with our ways to going to goodness,
Yeah.
to get rid of to relinquish the passion and ignorance, and just work in a mode of goodness, and then everything good will come, like the knowledge, the renunciation, the devotion will come, and devotion comes on the higher, above the mode of goodness. Yeah. Humbleness and all that. This comes with when you begin coming to those higher modes. Yeah, there's a lot written in or explained in the modes themselves in the Bhagavad Gita, in certain chapters. I think it's 17 chapters, and throughout the Bhagavatam, you can always when there are certain purports and certain verses, there talk a lot about it, so they can be more in detail explained. If you want to study, read only on that, or maybe I can find you some links for you. Just remind me. We'll end here today.
Yeah.
Today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. We continue tomorrow from verse 30, chapter 5, canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.